Call the meeting to order. We got Joyce, who is not here yet. Dana, absent. Dave Jones, absent. David? Here. Sheridan? Here. And Terry? Here. Thank you for being here. We have a few items on the agenda, and Terry just mentioned coming in that looking to chat about Mountain Town's 2030 Summit. Or maybe at the end of the meeting. Terry, does that work?
Yeah.
And then Deb's gonna come in and join us probably around 5:30. I have to leave about 5:45, 5:50, give or take. So Deb will be here in my stead. The first item is a review of the work plan items that ended up getting adopted on December 11th. That was that last regular town council meeting of 2024. The town board not only adopted the budget, but the annual strategic plan, which is why we spent so much time on the 10th. And y'all did a wonderful job grinding to pinpoint goals and work plan items to work towards achieving in 2025. So,
did the council have any comments on any of these, or was it, I mean, did they have so much they didn't really have time to?
Yeah, I mean, it was the 19th hour technically, you know what I mean? And so there weren't any, to answer your question, there weren't any substantive thoughts or comments. I like to think everyone read through that document at least one more time, because there was previous iterations, right? Like it had been several meetings worth of reviewing that and having it at the top of mind as much as possible. But I think everyone was bought into what you all put together. And again, I can't commend you all enough on spending that 2 hours on the 10th working through what's here on the screen. I don't think there's anyone on the Zoom right now, so I'm not going to share the screen. But you guys should be able to see this. And I copied and pasted this directly out of the strategic plan. The strategic plan in its final form was shared with you all. And the hope was that this bulleted list, and I can zoom out so we can, or try to zoom out so we can see everything, although it'll be kind of small. I'm hoping it captures very thoroughly what the board agreed to at the last meeting. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12 bullets. So a very ambitious work plan for 2025. And when you combine that with all the other pages and all the other work plan items for the town in 2025, there's a lot to do, which we're already working through now. But the purpose of this item was just to, go through each one to make sure it's, hopefully captured correctly. We already have the next item is really a review of a draft resolution for setting a net zero type goal, which I think would hit the mark for, part of that very first goal, or maybe the whole thing. We all need to come into agreement. This is kind of jumping ahead into what's being memorialized in that resolution. Make sure we all have an understanding of, or understanding what net zero really means and what we're looking to achieve, at least from an organizational standpoint for the town. So I don't want to do all the talking tonight. I'm just trying to lay the foundation here. Here are all the goals that were agreed upon. There's a lot in there, which is great. Do you all see anything that would be worth talking about now, or that needs to be corrected? Again, it was very late in the game. Gave a good go at trying to capture what you all had agreed upon. If anything doesn't look right, let me know. We can get it modified in the strategic plan. Hopefully it's not substantive in nature. If it is, then that's a different type of conversation. Shouldn't be too hard though. If it's non-substantive, we can work through it.
I think this looks really good, and I personally don't have any changes. One thing though, as we were going through it on the 10th, we assigned some point people, and I can't remember where that was captured. That's a great question. You're exactly right. I'm hoping I didn't capture that on my spreadsheet. I was busy trying to just make sure the verbiage of the goals was set forth.
I think Joyce did.
Did Joyce capture it?
Okay, so
yeah. I think that's something that you all internally could.
Yeah, we need to make sure that we have that so that we know who's working on it.
Right. who's gonna try to spearhead what goal, but yeah, great question there. And again, Dave, thanks for all your
Yeah.
leadership
so
at the last meeting. That was
Yeah.
wonderful.
I think it would be cool if we could spend some time today. I don't know if this would fit, but like just to timeline this, like just throw it on the timeline and figure out what we can do when.
Or a time priority list.
Yeah.
And that was the intent, sort of jump in with the item number 3, very general on the agenda. Just go up. Didn't quite know how to word it, but Sheridan, what you're talking about would be captured right here, number 3. Once we get past the resolution, you all can take it however you'd like. You can start talking about a schedule for achieving these, that bulleted list. I think you're spot on. I think that'd be good to spend some time doing that.
Going back to that list, there's a couple of them that have a bundle like synergy, like the very first 2, right? And we'll get into the draft resolution. But a roadmap to net zero, and we'll talk about this when we focus on that resolution as to whether or not that roadmap should be mentioned in the resolution. So I'll come back to that. But the other 2 is the participation in the Snap's Energy Board working cohort as it relates to the code adoption, and the next one, which is the evaluate establishment of a goal for net construction projects to be all electric. I think just attending to those 2 in combination, I think one of the vehicles or the mechanisms for bringing the all electric for new construction into the code is captured through an amendment or a series of amendments that they're offering. I haven't read them yet.
It's
But
161 pages of amendments, so.
Well, that's probably why I haven't read them.
Yeah.
But I think that's the mechanism that we would, if I understand the process right, that we would either adopt one of those existing amendments or draft our own to strengthen or bolster the town's adoption of the new code, but with a little bit more of an aggressive take, which is that going all electric for new construction and defining what that means. Is it limited to residential construction? Does it apply to remodels? Those kind of details. So,
And your
I'm not-
understanding is my understanding as well with the amendments that the cohort is working through.
so they're addressing, I think, that uplift or that
Seems that way.
stretch goal, whatever.
And I, in the last few weeks, have that understanding. So at the time of drafting this, I didn't know they were coming up with like amendment, they have these are my words, a base package.
Right.
To meet the spirit of what we need to do to get to the 2024 Energy Conservation Code adoption, including, and I don't know if the model electric and solar ready code is going to be a separate amendment or if that's in the base package. All electric requirement, I'm being led to believe, as you were saying, is part of another amendment. And so, yeah, I think
That was my understanding, is the model electric, all electric ready, EV ready was part of the base. And then the going to the more aggressive step of all electric for new construction may be an amendment. And hopefully they've already crafted that, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
exactly. I mean, that was exactly. So that's my understanding why the code core was put in place. And then, this is a lot of hard work that they're doing now to get all this in place to make it easier for us. But another hard part is the community engagement, stakeholder meetings that'll be necessary that I think will be done in conjunction with this code cohort, but it behooves us as an organization to do our own at, town council level, et cetera, when the right time comes.
So we don't have to tackle that right now, but that could be one, those 2 I see as being kind of bundled together as an item that needs to be put on the priority list and with a timeline. The 2 other things, with the Mountain Town 2030 thing came up since we did this. And so I'd like to add that to our list of things to address, and I can explain that later when the time is right. But there was also, if I recall, the list that you guys had compiled, the Daves, had a number of things that didn't make it to this work plan that we were still looking at wanting to work on. These are the ones that made it to the strategic plan, which is the higher level in front of the town council. But if I recall, there was probably another half a dozen or more that we all agreed.
A lot of those, I think we kind of decided are things that we can do internally that we didn't have to elevate to the town's strategic plan.
Yeah.
Have to do with what we're doing with the website, what we're doing with our, EV event and, you know, things like that.
And that may be where this Mountain Town 2030 thing fits into that category rather than this category. So,
I think for this, we were looking at all the things that we would require some input or approval from the town to go for.
and as Preston said, there wasn't a lot of discussion because these were embedded into a much larger list. But it was, Preston did make the point of saying that these were the latest 11th hour ads. So he did draw attention to it and there was no pushback. So there wasn't any discussion, but there was also no pushback, which means implicitly they've accepted it. It's now part of the 2025 strategic plan.
Exactly. So, so these are the items. We can, talk through them more if you'd like. There's another opportunity. Kind of had redundant items on here, but, I mean, it's y'all's show to run. I don't even know who the chair is right now. Is it still Dave Jones?
I think it is, yeah.
Well, I think Dave K should be chair for the foreseeable future. But, we have a draft, if it's all right by you all. A second item is this draft resolution to make some headway on a net zero goal of some sort.
Is this the draft that we submitted last year at some point?
I think so.
We're built on it, yeah.
I don't want to be that person, but I will. I drafted this in probably the late part of 2023
Okay.
or something. I'm making that up, like late part of 2023. It had made the rounds. It came to you all at some point, maybe in a couple different forums.
That was actually before I joined, so I don't know if we did any changes to it or.
No, but I think now's the time to
Yeah.
take it, elevate it.
Yeah, but there really was an agreement on process and how it was carried forward. Regardless, I think we're on a much better track now. So,
Before we dive into this, one last question on the last list of things.
absolutely.
Who is the representative on the cohort? Is that you? Who's participating on behalf of Ridgway? Because it's not me.
So,
Yeah, is that you?
No, I'm on the Eco Action EV.
I'm a little bit confused. There's I'm confused about what's what. There's a Eco Actions meeting cohort that is working on this, and I've participated in a meeting or two of those. And I get emails from Kendra and from somebody else.
Camarella.
Yeah, maybe and I don't know if that's part of the Snuffles or if that's separate or whatever it is, but
That's a good question, and it may be good for us at a future meeting to step back and do some sort, I'm just thinking out loud, some sort of flow chart to depict
would be.
Eco Action Partners as that overarching nonprofit, what the Snuffles Energy Board is, who it's comprised of. What the energy code cohort is, which I'll get into in a sec, but it can get very confusing really fast, even if you're immersed in it all the time.
And it is a good question because some of those meetings, the couple of meetings I've been in, you can kind of see who's on the Zoom call, and it doesn't look like there's anybody from Ridgway, except I think Dave and I were on one call, and those are the only people I
On the
recognize.
cohort or the Snuffles Energy?
On whichever one it was, one that.
Yeah, you know, they have different committees too. They have the
Okay.
EV readiness. It's something like that. There's
So
others
You
too.
ready
This
to
would be-
put them out?
This particular one, they followed up and asked for a list of the kind of the contractors, and
Yeah.
I didn't see anything back from that. I responded back to, I think it's Kendra,
Kendra, yeah.
and said, you know, I could talk to Mike Gill and get that list, try and get that list. She said Angela had already sent it.
Yeah, so let's back up. So,
Huh.
we've conducted all that. The town's representatives on the energy code cohort are Angie Kemp, Jordan Batchelder, and Mike Gill.
Also different Angela than the one. that-
Oh, yeah, different. Yeah, Angie, she goes by Angie. Angie is our senior planner. She was
Okay.
hired 5 months ago.
All right.
But yeah, they've attended every code cohort meeting. They represent the town as they work to build these packages and amendments that we were just talking about. So for the code cohort, Ridgway is well represented.
Okay,
I have not attended one of those meetings yet, thank goodness. It's at a technical level that I would, you know, it's great stuff, but I'd probably fall asleep for it.
Oh, yeah, it
To
is.
be honest with you. So wonderful stuff. And then Snuffles Energy Board, you know, not to belabor it. We can spend some time at future meetings, but we have reps
Now.
You know, Terry attends all the time,
Okay,
wearing multiple hats. John Clark
He
tries
was on
to
the
attend
last
almost all the, and I attend the last one. I don't attend to all of them.
That's right. You were talking about that.
Um,
And to put a little structure to it, so Eco Action Partners is a nonprofit group. They have their own board of directors. SBA has a member on that board. They, a while back, applied for a grant, which formed the Sneffels Energy Board, which is now a loose, it doesn't require any membership dues or anything, but it includes representatives from all of the municipalities, the counties, the towns, SMPA, pretty much anybody that wants to sit in on a meeting. It's pretty much managed by Eco Action Partners. So the Sneffels Energy Board is managed by Eco Action Partners, and it's a Sneffels Energy Board that it is the vehicle for the development and administration of the climate action plan.
okay,
So.
And all things sustainability. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful, not to hijack it, but it's a wonderful, somewhat unique collaboration and approach to advancing climate action type initiatives. So
it would be really useful to have, as you say, a flow chart and how these different organizations relate, so that as members of SAB, we kind of know where we can go to get information or get ideas or provide information.
I think that's something we should ask Eco Action for.
well, I will say, and you know, these are recorded, they're wonderful, all of them, but they, you know, from Kim to Emma to all, but they talk at such a technical level, sometimes it's hard to follow. So it may be good, you know, Terry, if like you or me.
Dave probably understands.
Dave could probably explain it in a very in a positive way, you know, how it all works. And what the structure, what the flow is. So.
And what our representation from the town and from SMPA and whatever. So we know who's, like, for instance, if I wanted to get some information, I probably wouldn't go straight to, somebody on the board. I might go to you to, figure out who I should talk to.
And so just to answer that question, there's a representative from the council and an alternate that are the liaisons to the Sneffels Energy Board. The city of Uray and the county of Uray, the county of San Miguel County, Telluride, Mountain Village, they all have similar appointed representatives to the Sneffels Energy Board. Of recent, based on a grant I helped write, we've now brought in Silverton and San Juan County into the Sneffels Energy Board. They're now a part of they expanded the climate action plan to now include that county and that town. Before it was limited to Uray and San Miguel County. They haven't had any progress in bringing in Montrose, sort of the West End, Norwood, New Grove, things like that, or Rico for that matter.
What is it? Durango's the plot? Is that?
The utility is, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of fall outside the region.
Yeah.
A little bit. But right,
Pretty much it's SMPA's territory, which is what's kind of defining the borders of the Sneffels Energy.
and right now, and this is a bit of a tangent, but we're all trying to navigate how to make it a little more equitable. I mean, you have representatives from all the organizations that you just talked about. Ridgway's always been attentive to it and participated more than, not to knock anyone, but the Urays and there's some other jurisdictions that just haven't really kept a pulse or participated at that level, which is fine, right? Everyone has different priorities. But in terms of what the Sneffels Energy, but what Eco Action Partners gets dollar-wise from these organizations to administer and run the Sneffels Energy Board each year, it's not equitable. It kind of runs across the board, and we're all kind of making it up as we go. And so we're aiming to, it just came up in the last few months, and it was because of us, actually.
Yeah.
To add more structure to it, like, maybe annual dues with a formula and a multiplier kind of thing, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm really excited to go that route so that Ridgway doesn't get scolded if we do our community grant program, which we still give more than some of the other organizations, but it only underscored the inequity between what the governments are
Well, and
contributing.
lack of structure, to your point. I mean, and this was a big subject of conversation in the last meeting, which I think was last week, that the staff has to take time to go out and present to each of those municipalities and then ask for money, and the amount of money they're getting varies depending upon, like, the budget process we went through, where They'd asked for 6,500 this year, and we only gave them 4,500, and that's what, to what Preston just mentioned, stimulated their look. It's like, well, how does this relate to the other organizations? And they presented a table of all of those municipalities, and you can see that, you know, per capita, Ridgway is actually contributing more than, certainly more than Uray, certainly more than Uray County, much less than Silverton and San Juan, because we got this big grant, so it was kind of an artificial pop on that, but so the consensus was that we ought to unify and make it more equitable to where each of the municipality pays a base, a solid base fee, and maybe extra money for special assistance. On the idea of special assistance, one of the things we talked about was they had just hired a new, I can't remember the exact name of the position, but they got grant money for a 3-year grant to hire somebody whose job it will be to go look for other grants and to work specifically with these municipalities. And what's the equitable distribution of that person's time? And how would we, the SAB / the town of Ridgway, tap that resource? And would it cost more money than what we just, you know, arbitrarily giving them on an annual basis? And that was the gist of it, is that most of the contributions from these municipalities is somewhat arbitrary. It's based on what they can negotiate with the municipality, which leaves some people paying very little, some municipalities, and some municipalities paying per capita more than the others, so.
Hey, Joyce.
Joyce,
So, we'll work to put some sort of, visual fiction flow chart to kind of go over at the next meeting or something. They'll paint that picture for you all.
Okay.
Welcome, Joyce. How are you doing? How you feeling?
They don't look too big.
Like, feel like a balloon.
It's so tiny still.
We were talking about the items that made their way into the work line items for the SAB on the strategic plan for 2025.
Okay.
Some good questions came up about this energy code cohort, how it all works with Eco Action Partners and the Snell Energy Board, you know, who's doing what, who represents the town on what. And so it was a good conversation. And we were close to venturing to the net zero resolution, unless anybody else has any follow-up or questions about what's on the screen.
the only one that I had was I couldn't remember who captured or where we captured who's the lead for each of these, and we thought maybe you captured that.
Yes,
Okay.
I do have that somewhere.
And I will send a note to ECO to see if they can't provide us a flow chart to help further understand how all these organizations relate to each other.
Mhm.
So I'll send that out and just have that available for the next meeting. They might come and present that person to us or something.
And you actually, when you reach out, do you mind copying me on that?
Yeah.
So that'd be great. Thanks for that. Anything else? Just want to talk about net zero.
Yep.
Yeah, I have this for each.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You wanna,
Send that out or somehow.
we still have a Google Drive?
Yes.
We
Have
do.
we sent you that?
That was, which is your password? I have no idea. Which Google Drive? How many? I got 6.
I know, okay, well, it's on my Google Sheets, that's why I'm saying,
Okay.
but I
If
can,
you could email it as a, old school or send it.
I
as a
can
smoke-
share it as a
a
link.
Smoke signal.
Smoke signal.
Do you use Google /
Uh,
Gmail
yes. Gmail.
services? Then I'll share the link and you'll be able to open it as a Google Sheet.
Okay, I'll try.
You'll get it. You'll figure it out.
I believe in you,
Okay,
Tammy.
I'll work on
You're so strong and capable.
it. Except the salesperson.
We have this resolution that you all have seen before, at least parts of this, or maybe all of it altogether. You may not have had a chance to read it again. It's not wildly lengthy. It's simply a very, first go at trying to meet the spirit of what the net zero goal that's been established. And I think it'd be helpful. And I was telling Terry this, I'm not proud of it, but I find myself Googling what net zero is almost every time we talk about net zero. I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like there's varying definitions, but at least agreeing upon what net zero really means and what context and how we're gonna apply it, I think would be important. Who would like to give a go at educating all of us on what net zero actually means to them? Or maybe it's a universal definition.
No, you're right. Many organizations use it differently, and so I think it's important to establish our own terminology definition.
And a little bit of background and impetus to the reason for doing this is that we are, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but we are now, we've contributed, town has contributed $3,000. It was passed by, in the last council meeting to be a corporate member. I can't remember exactly what the delineation is.
A founding member.
A founding member of Mountain Town 2030. And the reason Mountain Town 2030 is called Mountain Town 2030 is it's an attempt to get all of the mountain towns to establish a goal of going net zero by 2030. So there's a little bit of history behind that. One of the things I had hoped to do before this meeting, forgot to do it, was contact the director of that and say, tell us how other towns have established their own goal of going 2030. At the last conference, they asked people, there's 90 municipalities represented there, to raise their hand if they've committed to going, net zero by 2030. And it was only a handful that had actually had gone through this process. But it didn't come up as to what that meant. What did the city of Vail or town of Vail, whatever it is, what did they mean when they said we're going to be net? They established the goal of going 2030. So I'm sure we're not alone in not understanding what exactly it is we're trying to commit to.
Well, that's important too, because if everybody's doing a net zero definition, it seems like we ought to be somewhat aligned with others, and we should be aligned with what the state says is net zero.
And a very narrow micro view of what it means to be net zero. If you're just looking at a house, for example, the simplest definition is that the house produces as much energy as it consumes. Now, the rub there is if it's not all electric, there's no real way to offset the use of natural gas. I mean, if your house is all electric, then theoretically you could put on a solar system or participate in a program like the Totally Green program.
It's just easier to account.
It's easier to account for because otherwise there's no way to offset. Dave Jones would contribute when I was at SMPA $400 or $500 a year based upon his own calculation, what it took to offset his own transportation, fossil fuel use, and his travel fossil fuel use. And he added that to the Totally Green program, just unsolicited, would send a check. That was his way of personally accounting for it. But there's a lot of controversy as to whether or not you can offset the use of natural gas by producing green electricity. So the difficulty of establishing the definition is in the downstream of that is like, well, then how do you achieve it?
I mean, my personal one that I've been using and thinking of in terms of is greenhouse gas emissions. So basically net zero is that you're generating zero greenhouse gas emissions.
Another term for it is carbon neutrality. That's one that seems to be synonymous with the net zero is carbon neutral, which, if you're not burning fossil fuels at your house, you're not producing any carbon, but your use of electricity has carbon embedded in the supply, which is what you can, if you use solar to offset that 1-for-1, you could zero out your carbon usage.
So for Ridgway, we could just have a goal of trying to use only electricity, like the town itself, and then if all the electricity comes from renewable sources, then it could be net zero?
So that you're getting into the roadmap now, which is another one of these goals.
Because I don't know how.
I think you're talking in terms of definition.
Yeah.
Definition.
If we went all electric, and the electricity we bought from clean sources
Or produced it.
Mhm.
then could we say that we are net zero?
And I think that's an affirmative. I think the question as it relates to this resolution is, do we bother to define it or do we leave it very vague? Or do we put a parenthetical or a 1A or B saying it will be the mission of the Sustainability Advisory Board to fully define net zero and to create a roadmap to achieve it? So we could add those two parentheticals or those A and B to number 1, because number 2 and number 3 are very specific, right? But number 1 is extremely vague. So do we leave it vague or do we make it more specific? I think that's a question Chris and I had a chat about that over the phone, on the phone the other day is, what should the resolution include? Should it get specific, or should we leave that as a mission for the SAB to figure out?
Hmm.
Do we bother defining what net zero is? Do we change it to carbon neutral? Do we attempt to define it, or do we take the next year to figure out what exactly it means?
Are we, you're exactly right. So on the resolution, all the whereas statements and recitals are important, of course, but the meat is right here after the now therefore. So you have the 1, 2, 3, and that's what would be enacted on the policy side with this resolution. Because we're enrolled in totally green, that doesn't make us,
It
Net
technically
zero.
might, you know.
and so that's where the definite, like, how we're defining, okay, because I mean, we've been
With the
enrolled.
exception of our use of gas. So with any facility that's using gas,
But I think,
that's not.
I think I mean, you kind of nailed, you've kind of made it specific in this first resolution, because you have said greenhouse gas emissions. So you're basically saying that we will zero out our greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, yeah.
Which is an effort to fuel switch, that's the term they use. So right now, to Preston's point, just to reiterate that for the new people, the town has enrolled in the Totally Green program, so all of the electricity used by the town facilities is offset by a penny a kilowatt hour premium they pay to zero that out, but it doesn't account for the gas. So part of the roadmap would be, how do we transition in the next 5 years to get away from using any natural gas for our energy?
That's my
Do
understanding.
we know like about what percentage of Ridgway uses gas? Like 5% of our heating comes from gas.
Well, so there's two issues here. One is, do we establish this goal just for the town facilities as an example that we're promoting for the rest of the residents? Or is this goal apply to everybody in the towns?
I think it's the former, and if you look at our work items, we are saying we will do that, but then as an example of how we go about doing that, try to educate the community. So,
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that, hey, Deb.
and I think it'd be very difficult for us to do it for the town and surrounding community, because we don't have any jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Well, and you wouldn't be able to make it retroactive to existing.
Or enforce it, or all those
Or
things.
enforce it, it'd be like impossible.
We just don't have any control over anything
But
except
we
the
do
town
have
operations.
control, that we, not the SAB, but we, the town, have control over our own energy use,
Right.
just like an individual resident would.
So I wonder if it's feasible for us to say that we could, remove all the gas use we do and replace it with electricity, or if that's not really doable, and that's why we need to keep it vague.
That's why, well, I think we need to come up with a roadmap.
Yeah, that's why we have a roadmap, because I think we have to discuss like, what are we using natural gas for? And are there even like things that we can supplement for all electric?
Before we can determine.
Because we still have a water treatment plant and a wastewater treatment plant, which has like specific equipment. And most of it, I think, is powered by electricity anyway, but I mean, if there are certain items that like don't have a component, then.
So we would need to you're exactly right. We need to inventory all of that to understand what that amount is, right?
Which is
What we
a
rely on it
roadmap.
for.
Right.
That should be part of the roadmap.
And I,
Yeah.
I already put together like a draft roadmap. We don't have to go through that now, but that was item number 1 on draft roadmap, was
Right.
figure out
Where are we deficient? Yeah.
what our sources
Yeah.
are.
Okay.
So that goes back to the question in this resolution, is do we leave it vague like this? And have other communities that committed to going net zero, did they define it any more than that? Or did they make it very specific? In other words, should number 1 be replaced by a goal to reach net zero in town-owned and managed facilities by 2030? Do we define net zero, or do we just leave it this vague? Or do we put a parenthetical saying that it becomes the mission of the subcommittee called the SAB to further define the goal and a roadmap to achieve it? I mean, those two phrases might be sufficient.
Those are all good options. I would recommend, since you're already here trying to put pen to paper with these goals, that you be as specific as you all want to be so that it can be adopted.
So I think the first thing I would like to be specific about is to make it clear that we are talking about town operations.
That's
The term
that's
town,
the good word, operations. Yeah.
the term town can be misconstrued as the community of Ridgway. So I think this
Municipal operations.
Yeah, municipal operations.
So hereby updates its greenhouse gas emission goals to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions for town municipal operations by 2030.
Another thing, the Mountain Towns 2030 on their page for, if you wanna join the pact, like you were saying, they word it as committing to achieve net zero emissions by 2030, which kind of sounds a little bit less intense than trying to say reach net zero. emissions.
Committing to achieve, I like that, yeah. Because it's quite possible that no matter what we do, we'll never get there.
Yeah.
Well, and that would solve one of the big issues I have with this is, I don't know how we put a date to it without having established a roadmap. But if we say achieving and committing to it, achieving. What is it? How do you just put it
Committing to achieve, yeah.
Committing to achieve net zero.
I like that.
by 2030?
Did you?
By that time, we should be able to have established a roadmap, figure out what our replacement schedule is for replacing gas sources, which, I mean, it would be really difficult if we started right now to do that kind of replacement, because we've got heating replacement, we've got fleet replacement, we've got all this stuff. It'd be really hard to get it done by
But I think it's
2030.
okay to put a goal and work backwards from that, rather than
Yeah.
trying to just say work forward into infinity. So, I mean, and that's the nature.
That's why I like that word.
Can you read that again? Because I think that captured it pretty well.
Yes, it says addressing climate change at the speed and scale that it demands by committing to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030.
That's still pretty vague though. Because it could mean what we're talking about here, it could mean, getting a solar microgrid on Green Street Park and in the athletic park to start producing energy to offset the energy we use, right?
Right. Which currently,
Or consume.
and I can address that here in a few minutes, because I have that on my list of things to talk about too. There's a new grant that came out that the town could apply for by a concept paper on February 27th to get money to put in the remaining of the solar, not the stuff that SMPA is gonna look at, but if SMPA, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's related, if we put in that 200 kilowatt system that was approved through the master plan, currently those RECs, the renewable energy credits, will go into the totally green pool. However, SMPA is willing to work, because I'm in charge, to negotiate that all of those RECs ought to fulfill the amount of RECs that are being purchased through the total green. So we can say we're not only purchasing RECs to offset our use, but those are generated in the town, rather than being generated out in Paradox Valley or through the micro hydros and all that.
But again, to me, it seems like that is specifically related to electricity use.
Right.
And it seems to me that it's sort of a barrier between the two. You've got the electricity use, and sure, whatever you can do to offset your electricity use through generating it in the town or going totally green or whatever, we need to do to achieve net zero. But in addition to that, on the fossil fuel side, we've got to zero out.
Right.
Our fossil
We'll
fuels.
never meet this
And you
goal
can't-
without doing that.
You can't, go back and forth.
Well, I think one's embedded in the other. I think the part of the roadmap is to get to having zero fossil fuel based energy use. And then second to that is having a mechanism to offset it.
Until then.
But it's all based on.
Right,
all the
I
energy
see your
you
point.
electric.
Yeah, but if we are enrolled already in the Totally Green program, we have achieved the second point. We can maybe improve our cost structure by generating some of that electricity in town through the microgrid or,
Well,
Whatever.
Totally Green allows us to say that 100% of the electric use in the town is sourced through renewables, but it doesn't address the non-electric energy.
no, but my point is we have to replace that with what most cases will
That's
be
that's the heavier
electrification.
lift, actually. Yeah.
Will be the electrification, and if we do that, we are using more electricity. But as long as you're still sourcing that through the Totally Green
Right.
program, we're okay.
Okay.
And that's
But we
automatic
might
right
find
now.
that that's very expensive, and we're better off to put up more solar over parking lots or whatever we do. We can do microgrids, the Green Street, that's a separate issue in terms of our cost structure for the town,
Right.
for paying for its electricity.
One thing that may be helpful, would be to contact the municipalities that have adopted these goals, to understand if they've better defined or, I'm sure they've had these conversations and figure out how they're accounting for what we're talking about.
Absolutely, it'd be
And that's
really
what I was
useful.
hoping to have achieved before this meeting. but
Yeah.
Time to.
Well, and I have to leave here in a minute, but, I imagine Vale has something. I
Well,
don't think on any, but Jackson,
And I
some of
think-
these founding members of Mountain Towns 2030 and maybe worthwhile for, you all to divvy up who's calling who to pick their brains and understand how they're approaching it to help us make sure we craft this the way that would fit Ridgway the best, right?
And there's a funnel point. So by contacting the folks at Mountain Town 2030, they can reach out to these others and bring that information to a point to us. And I'm sure we're not the first one to ask, right? Other towns that are adopting this goal are probably asking the very same thing.
So, yeah, and there's no, I know climate change is something we need to address yesterday and a long time ago, but there's no rush in getting this adopted, if you know what I mean. So we want to make sure we do it right.
Right.
So, it doesn't mean we have to forward it to the town council for adoption here in a few weeks.
As a going in point, though, I like the idea of having the definition of net zero relate specifically to greenhouse gas emissions, that we should opt to try and get the town to the point where we have zero greenhouse gas emissions, and you'll see in my roadmap, another alternative is to purchase greenhouse gas offsets, which I personally don't like, but that is another option.
Is that really a thing you can do?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Corporations.
Carbon tax.
Yeah, there's also, but the question is, how real are those?
It's similar to the Totally Green program in concept. However, there is an actual accountability that the electricity that the town is paying a penny kilowatt hour for is 70% produced in SMPA's territory. The other 30% is purchased through RECs, through Tri-State, who have put in large wind and solar generators. So they're retiring those RECs on our behalf if we purchase them. So there is an actual accountability trail to it.
That's a good one. So you're saying that the definition of net zero we should probably think about it being like not with offset? Is that what you were just saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should,
Called out greenhouse gas.
greenhouse gases. So
Fossil.
I think there are some definitions of net zero that say, well, you can kind of, if you generate a bunch of excess electricity, then, maybe that can account for the fact that you're still burning fossil
Well,
fuels.
that was the controversy I was mentioning with Dave Jones, is that he was trying to offset his own fossil fuel use by buying more green electricity. And there's a huge controversy, no, you can't really do that.
And I
You
think
just really need to switch to electricity and then
in the
you can
meeting-
offset electricity.
in the meeting that we had was, where Kim was in our meeting, which was December, or was that the one? Anyway, Kim made that point. You can't offset
Gas. with
gas
electricity.
with electricity.
Right,
Yeah.
you can switch and then you can offset electricity.
One thing I'll say, and then I have to leave, so be nice to Deb, gone. It may be good to identify that, if you all wanted to, or agreed on this, that we identify in the goal that the town's already achieved, through the Totally Green, an offset on the electric side of things, just to make sure it's understood. And to talk to what you're talking about on the greenhouse or fossil fuel side, right? So that'd be natural gas. What else would there be?
So with
That's what we're.
Gasoline.
Gasoline, right?
But it's any other operations if we're generating methane, for instance, in anything that we do, I don't know. But those aren't the only greenhouse gases. But you're right, it's mostly gasoline and natural gas. So you need
fossil
to-
fuels, yeah.
Right.
I just, before you go, just one little typo. It's on number 3, third line. It says to be achieved.
Oh, achieved, yep. Thanks.
Can you read what you have now from that discussion, the alter number 1?
We're gonna specify municipal operations as the scope.
Okay.
And we're gonna say hereby, is hereby committing to achieve in some way. We'll have to wordsmith it, but
Committing to achieve net zero carbon emissions.
Committing to achieve.
yeah, committing to achieve net zero.
The commitment is a 2030 commitment. Achieving it might be later.
You said, Sheridan, you said net zero carbon emissions,
Net zero yes. Net zero
because that's what it says on mountain towns.
That's what it says on my tags.
And I think that's great if we can stay consistent with
Yeah.
that, then we've got part of the.
I agree. I think that, again, I mean, if it turns out that every other municipality in Mountain Town is using a different definitions, then maybe we just need to realign this.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing. But.
Thank you, Deb, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks, y'all. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Good job, Preston, thanks.
Thanks, and thanks for putting this all together.
Yeah.
Should the discussion or the mention of our already being in the Totally Green program, would that be in the whereases? Not in the
Yeah, it's a good
resolution?
question. I think it could be, I don't know if it already is in the whereas. I think it should actually be in the, in number one somewhere. Or that was where my head was going right now. You all can work on how it should be crafted, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning that some segment of net zero on the electric side has already been achieved by way of opting into Totally Green as of, that was like in March of 2020.
So it seems to me that might fit in the whereases, whereas the town is already.
Maybe it's a
enrolled in-
whereas,
yeah,
because, right.
already enrolled in.
Because these are kind of things now that we're gonna do,
Future.
so we've already done the.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about making sure it's specific so
Yeah.
everyone understands, like, if we're already saying we've offset the electric side of things, that needs to be, because the whereases and the recitals can get lost. I mean, that's just the fancy nice
Right.
adjectives.
Yeah,
It's,
sure.
this is the meat, 1, 2, and 3. That's what I would offer. So good luck crafting. This is a hard exercise. I'll see y'all later.
Yeah.
One quick last question for you, President. Should we establish a date at which point this gets put before council? Should it be by the March council meeting or something? Should we work towards it?
If you ask my opinion, no. I mean, I don't think you need to be beholden to that rush to, you gotta meet once a month. So, I think there's some tasks like what we were talking about, you don't have to go to calling the Nails or Mountain Towns and seeing how they may be able to help us get that crafted. That could take some time. That could take some time.
Yeah.
If you want to establish a goal to get it before the town council in March or April or something, by all means, but
Yeah.
I agree with that, just because I think that we want to create a roadmap first. And then once we define the roadmap, which means like we have to do an inventory of all non-electric, then create the roadmap based on that. And then have specific goals and then and then that has to get integrated into this resolution. And for that to happen by like March, I mean, we're not gonna have all of that figured out in 2 meetings.
I feel like, yeah, fall maybe.
Totally, I was like, that's gonna take some time, especially if it's done well.
Now, Preston
Right,
mentioned that I
so-
should compartmentalize the discussion on Mountain Town 2030 at the end. I think it's material here. Just to quickly review that, the town committed $3,000 to becoming a founding member. In exchange for that, we get 3 passes to the next summit, which is gonna be in Breckenridge in October, and an invitation that we can provide somebody on the advisory committee. And I've talked with John and I attended the last 2 summits. The one was in Vail and then recently in Jackson Hole. And we've debated as to which one of us might be that person. That liaison from the town to that, but it doesn't have to be town council or mayor. It could be somebody from this committee. And I had volunteered to be that person. Whether that's codified, and it will be codified after the election. So after we do the election for the next town council, we go through and do committee assignments and establish liaisons. And this would be one of the ones that would be established. And I'd volunteer for that. But in the interim, I'd be happy to contact, because I know that the founding director is there to ask that question of, could you give us examples of what other communities that have committed have actually done to bolster or to sustain their commitment? And basically what we're trying to do, and see if they can afford us some examples to work from. So I'll offer to do that.
Great.
Between now and the next meeting, is to reach out to 2020 and on their, you know, how they defined it, how, you know, what sort of roadmap documentation, what sort of resolutions have they put in place? Because it may be an example resolution that we can copy. You know,
That would be
at least go to school on. So I'll commit to doing that along with the contacting Eco on a flow chart.
So I don't know if Preston told you guys, I'm just here to like take notes. So you guys are just go for it.
So maybe we
Stuck
can
with it.
kind of,
Do you want to wrap it?
yeah, maybe wrap this one up by making it clear who's gonna be doing what. So you said you're going,
So I'll take that step of trying to get precedent examples for other resolutions and the meat on the bones. Have they established roadmaps? Have they narrowed the definition beyond the definition? And I'll have to go, is that just on their website? Is it on the homepage or something? I'll look it up.
Yeah, I
those
could
mountain towns.
just send it to you.
And along those lines, back to that, we had three, there were $500 registrations. John and I went as on behalf of the town last time, but I think that at least one member of the SAB besides me ought to plan on going to that. That's in October, second week in October. If people want to start thinking
And nominate Dave.
about that. If he's
I
even.
mean, I think it'd be interesting going, but I think Dave would be in a really good position.
Dana went to the first one on her own without any support.
Oh,
The
okay.
town paid for my lodging and for the registration for me to go to this last one. Now
The first one, didn't Terry, or didn't JT?
JT was there.
JT came with John and I.
He had accommodations for you.
Yeah, we stayed
First was to go.
Yeah. So Terry, I just want to make sure that you're from Mountain Town 2030, you're gonna look and see if they have resolutions and roadmaps and stuff.
Do you
Give us
know
some
any
backup.
mountain towns have adopted any net zero resolutions?
Yeah, there's a handful of them that may be on that, listed on the website. We raised our hand, but it was informal. It's like, who's committed to 2030 with
I think they
Ridgway?
finished filling this out, because right now they only have one, so I think.
Park City.
Are all of you hooked up with Mountain Town 2030?
Yeah, I
You get
think we're-
the emails? Okay, I can take care of that.
Thank you.
Because I get
Yeah, I
them
get
all. So, you have it obviously, and are you, okay.
Yeah,
And the last one, I actually gave two
Sure.
presentations, one on behalf of the town, one on behalf of SMPA.
Mhm.
And then we got an award for that, the grant that I wrote for Silverton, we got the Collaboration of the Year Award. Beat out 34 other towns that applied for it.
That's badass.
Yeah, we got a trophy.
They send out a lot of information
Yeah.
throughout the
Okay.
month, so.
You
Good stuff.
know, this other accounts, occurs to me that maybe a whereas, and this should be the definition, our definition, the definition the town of Ridgway is going to use for net zero,
Right.
GHG or
We're
whatever.
establishing a goal to reach something that's defined as.
Right,
Yeah.
so that should be in the whereas, so it's clear somewhere in the resolution exactly what we mean by greenhouse gas.
Okay, well, so we do have work to do. It's not something we can just slap in front of the town.
But maybe we'll look out in Park City, Utah, or somebody
Yeah.
have one
Well,
that's just as
in
one.
particular, numbers 2 and 3 of that. You know, I'd like to see get the council adopt that as soon as possible. So when we get approached by those looking for financial assistance for new housing projects, we already have this in place. So I'd like to see this get adopted by the town by March or April at the latest.
But is it somehow related to the code work as well? I mean, are we?
there's already a push for that. I mean, I feel like any multi-use projects that come in are already getting pretty much told to be
Well, they've done it voluntarily.
EV and PV ready,
Yeah,
you
it's just
know?
not- It's just not codified. The
This would-
the most recent ones, this one, the new one out here did not do EV. It did, I don't know if it did PV ready. They did do all electric.
Riverfront, you mean?
Yeah, what was that was called?
Which
The
one?
triangle one. The riverfront.
Yeah, because there's Riverfront and then the other one was
Vista
Vista
Commons.
Park
Mhm.
Commons. I don't think Vista,
There's Park Commons on the other side of the highway.
yeah.
Neither one of them committed to solar. The Wetterhorn did. They went all electric. They went heat pumps and they went solar. But that was based on their own volition. It was not. a
Yeah, I
requirement.
think that when these projects started, those requirements were not in place.
Yeah.
Or those, or, they were not coming up as being in place.
The
That's it.
all electric.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
I
they
think
went
that-
all electric though. I don't think they used
Vista,
gas.
Riverfront
Yeah,
Village.
but I don't know if they went EVP ready.
Yeah.
They talked about it. I pushed them on it in the
Yeah, I
council
don't
meeting,
know.
but I don't know if they actually committed to it.
No.
But that's a good point. This would be, but on the other hand, they maybe don't have to adopt this resolution to be to adopt a different resolution or whatever that says these all have to be PV and EV ready.
And I
Well,
will tell you right
The
now, that
contingency here is the use of funding to offset fees, so that's,
Yeah.
that's a carrot stick.
like, I do think that if we end up adopting this resolution in the fall instead, there's not a ton of like large multi-use projects coming on the line.
No.
Because
Well,
the market is not great right now. There aren't a lot investing, and like with a ton of multi-use already being built or like about to be built in town, like,
Excess inventory.
yeah, there's just not, I'm doing development review for a lot of the multi-housing, and there's not anything like, the things that are pending are things that were like from years ago, that this wouldn't,
What's the little,
apply to
the little
them.
sixplex over here, the Matt's.
Ridge 6,
Ridge 6.
Ridge
And I
6,
think
yeah.
he's committed to going all electric.
He's trying to do a lot of it, but also like the cost of doing public infrastructure and improvements is costing him more than what he anticipated. So I think if he already told town he was committing to X, Y, and Z, then he'll have to do that to meet, to comply, but.
Well, I think he was asking for fee waivers and stuff, so that's the sticking here.
Yeah.
Right,
Or the carrot.
so. So if they already agreed on waiving fees in exchange for all electric stuff, then he'll still be held to that. But if he,
I just don't think it was a requirement to waive the fees. I think they voluntarily did it in the ones that I'm familiar with. But this puts a little meat on the bone saying if you want us to waive fees, you have to abide by
Yeah.
this.
yeah, and again, I'm just letting you know that. I think we have time to create the roadmap and then get this adopted before, like, and any larger projects that come through likely probably won't happen until 26. Cause everything coming down the pipeline in 25 are all like items that were already pending in 24. There is nothing like large and new coming in 25.
And I sort of agree with you that, the sooner we can get the town to adopt this, the sooner the better off. However, I think we ought to do it right. And so it might not be fall, it might be, May or June or something, so it might not
Yeah.
be the last.
If we can do it by Mountain Town, that'd be good, I think.
Yeah,
By
we
the
could talk
event.
about it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
in October.
Yeah.
We should have it done by then.
Yeah.
We're gonna be up in front of, we'll be standing up in front of.
Totally. Okay. Yeah, I think that it can be done. I think if we just make sure that the roadmap becomes like a focus, and then figuring out the tasks associated. Who do, working, whether it's like a meeting separate with Preston, or who do we have to meet to get an inventory of all the non-electric uses? I think it's figuring out all the information we need to gather first, and then who do we need to talk to get all of that information, and then we can kind of create the roadmap from there.
So just picking up what you're saying, do you think prior to us finalizing the language in this, that we should have the roadmap developed, or should that be an outcome of this?
I'm
Okay.
under the impression that we should create the roadmap first, like Preston was kind of pushing that. He thought that it would be great for this resolution to include a lot of the detail specifics, but we would be wiser to go like create the roadmap and figure out, like you had said, like, how are we gonna achieve net zero carbon emissions? Because we can't create a goal here.
It
unless-
seems there's two layers to this. One is
Mm-hmm.
defining the goals. And then later in my mind, later defining the way we're going to achieve those. That's the roadmap. But I think the first thing that needs to be put into this is to have more detail on what the goals mean. What does it mean to be net zero? Is it limited to municipal operations, those kinds of things? But to actually achieve it, that to me, that roadmap is a living document that's going to be modified over the years, the next 4 or 5 years. So I don't know that we have to wait till we have that completely fleshed out before we further. and
I think
more
there's
focused
sort
on
of
goals.
a middle ground. I think that, and we, if you want, we can show the roadmap that I've established so far as sort of a starting point. But I think what we can do is we can figure out the basic roadmap and start executing on items in that roadmap at the same time that we have, you know, gone ahead and got this resolution adopted. You know, things like doing the inventory of, you know, what we're generating, I think will be relatively fast. I mean, we should be able to pretty quickly go through and see what all we have that's requiring fossil fuels. But then the process of how do we go about figuring out what replacements are for those, costing structures, where's money coming from, all that kind of stuff.
Usually that's called, well, at least in my world with the grant writing, a feasibility study. So you've established the goals, you've done the inventory. Now you're, you know, what are the let's just say the appliances that you could replace,
Right.
could fuel switch, and then what is the cost? And then the fourth one is, how do you fund it? So it's, what does it mean? You know, what does it look like? What does it cost and how do you fund it? It's part of the roadmap.
So I guess I feel like if we have if we figured out exactly how we're going to do it all, that could take a couple of years
That's
to
what I'm
even
saying.
figure that out.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's worthwhile having this adopted so that it's forcing us to go through that process in a timely fashion.
Becomes the mission.
I'm easy about the 2030 date, but using the wording that we have here, maybe that's okay.
So where do we stand with this task tonight? So I'm going
We're
to
done
try to
with
get,
this, right?
so I'm gonna try to get some
we're
precedent
done with that.
and then we'll bring this back to the table next month.
Yeah,
And I can contact Eco Action since you're getting hold of the Mountain Time. I can
Okay,
ask
so
them for that.
you'll ask them for their flow chart of how do all these organizations relate?
Yes. Did you say
Eco-
Eco Action? Yes.
Yeah, we discussed this before you walked in, but there was a request by the committee to further understand the relationship between ECO, Sneffels, cohort, all of these different organizations, different initiatives and how they relate to each other.
Okay.
So you'll take that one off my plate then?
Yes.
From that one out.
What is next on your agenda?
discussion of other work plan items. So that's kind of going back to
I think.
agenda item 1. And
Okay.
are you guys, it sounds like you guys are going through the bulleted list.
Oh, here we go.
We were
We
we
haven't
saying,
started doing that.
You haven't? Okay.
we looked over everything, to make sure it was all accurate. And then we started talking about net zero, but then we also wanted to put everything into like a calendar idea, like, you know, projecting what is gonna get done by when and.
So I think that would be useful to have the calendar, you know, some sort of a calendar thing, maybe a priority list.
Yeah.
You know, list of my
What's your
priority.
email?
Mine is DJKEH.
DJK. Okay, maybe I don't have it. Okay,
KEHNEIER.
sorry. You should just type it.
You want me to send it to you?
Let me just send you, I'll send you the link to the Google Sheet, so you have it with the names, because I can send it to one person.
So Dave, since you've already taken some initiative on the roadmap, should we make you the point person for?
I remembered that I was.
Yeah.
But I think-
Yeah, and then we
Never mind.
do have this all listed as who's kind of the primary, essentially like liaison for it.
And I had in mind that you were the point person for the resolution.
Okay, yeah, and that's what prompted this. I asked him to resurrect that. I didn't know he was gonna put it in packets. I was grateful for that.
So yeah, I don't think we need to go through each of these points right now, other than to talk about sort of maybe prioritize and talk about. I mean, if you're interested, I did put together a draft roadmap for the net zero. If you want to look at that, but maybe that's a secondary thing, maybe we do our prioritization and
If it relates to how we continue to flesh out the resolution, I think it would be important to see, but it's also, it's the working aspect of it, once we have the resolution, unless it helps inform the development of the resolution.
well,
Schedule.
it, it might. I think I could go through it pretty
No harm in
quickly.
distributing it. That's,
I think I could, it was an email I sent to, I sent an email to Preston. I don't know if you had
Oh,
that.
no, I don't. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
So if you could get that email, then put it up on the screen.
I won't be able to get that unless it's in the packet. Is it in the packet?
No.
Then
So,
I can't get it.
I
Because
can,
I'm logged on to his system or his account. I can't get emails here. So if you want to share it,
so
Can you hear
to
it?
join the Zoom meeting. do that?
uh-huh.
either that or you can send it to Deborah Preston, ask them to distribute it to us.
Yeah, I
Maybe
can't,
did
I
the
can't
person-
because I'm not logged on like I normally
Okay,
am.
let me join the meeting.
What are you trying to show?
Let's see, where
Oh.
I'm here.
I will go through it in like a total of maybe 2 minutes and you'll see what. Because we talked a little bit about, road mapping and stuff like that. So maybe it's-
And I will query the town 20,
Okay,
30
so I'm
people, see
gonna
if they have similar
give you-
roadmaps.
there you should have, okay, I'm gonna give you permission to get in here and share this.
Yeah, Terry, your resolution,
Um,
Dave and David are on the roadmaps.
oops. Okay.
I think you need to let me in the meeting first.
Oh, you're not in the meeting, okay.
So, with respect to nominating somebody to be the Ridgway liaison to the Mountain Town 2030 Advisory Board, do any of you have objections to me volunteering for that position?
No, I think that'd be great.
Okay. Nice picture.
So I don't really need to
Show
show
video?
video, do I?
Just need permissions to share.
So,
Today,
For what, today?
Oh. April,
April.
early April.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's
how
coming up.
how do I get to one of my, let's share.
So far.
So just pull it up on, if you have it in a file
Yeah, I
or
have
an
it.
email, and then just hit the share. Down below, it'll say share screen and a green arrow. And then it'll come up with a bunch of stuff and share it in.
I don't know why it's showing you this. Is that an exit?
It's so crazy that you're going to do this.
So share.
So I grow lettuce in the summer.
I think what's crazy is like at this point,
Okay.
I'm like 10 weeks away from having a tiny human
And then
in our home.
you go, where's the manual?
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, where is the manual? Yeah, and it's like, she could come early, she could come late, so it's like plus or minus she type of girl.
And the name might be.
Yeah, what are your names?
We narrowed it down to a couple. And we're gonna wait until she's born to like decide which one.
To make them quit and then come back.
That's pretty exciting.
I'm sorry, I missed the names. What did you say?
We're kind of like holding them back because we narrowed it down to a couple.
Okay.
And then we're gonna see which one like feels right
Oh,
when
that's
she's
exciting.
So
born.
she's not gonna say.
Oh, okay. Got it. I got it.
Yeah. Donna and I,
It's secret.
Donna and I agreed to like withhold until we
Yeah.
decide.
It's not like X or Y.
Because the thing is, you may look at her and go, no, I'm gonna do this.
Exactly,
So excited.
yeah. And we had a couple friends that were like, you kind of don't realize how much like other people's opinions kind of start influencing your name choice, but really it should be like your decision.
Exactly.
That's such a
So-
good point. So don't tell people so they can't have opinions.
It really makes. me
Really?
feel
Why
old,
would you pick
because I
that
celebrate
name?
my
What does that
son's
mean?
38th
No,
birthday.
then in Greek it means.
Right, I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wild, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so I'm gonna admit you again. And then you're back up, so.
okay, now, let's see.
Where's the dog? Oh, there you are. Come here. Come here. Come here, you silly. It's like, I don't think so. Come here.
What's the play? You have to get out on your fours.
Okay, okay, you got it. Okay, so, everybody can see that.
All right. All right, so, this is kind of where I was going with this. And again, this is with my impression that, net zero means greenhouse gas emissions. So, there's two ways to get to net zero. One would be to eliminate sources of emissions. Another is to offset sources of emissions. So within the first possibility, the first thing, as we always said, is we've got to identify all the sources.
So inventory.
And then the next thing is determine which, if any of these sources can be eliminated and eliminated. If we have some sources. that
Or
may-
replaced,
Eliminate.
Well, the first thing would be to see if you can eliminate.
yeah.
Okay, the second thing is identify replacement solutions for what remains. So let's say, as an example, that we have decided we have old leaf blowers that we really don't use anymore, so let's get rid of them. Or that we're gonna outsource our leaf blowing, I don't know, bad example, but the point is that there might be things we can eliminate just because we don't really need them. The other things are figuring out what the replacements are. So for fleets, replace gas powered pickups with electric powered with EVs. For water heating, replace gas water heaters with electric water heaters. Did I do that?
I did that,
Water
sorry.
source heat pumps in particular.
Or heat pump water heaters. For heating, look at replacing gas powered natural gas furnaces with heat pumps. Anyway, come up with a list of what all the replacements are, and there might not be replacements for some things. Example I used was that I don't think there's any really good electric tractors at this point.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of like operating equipment that
We may not.
I'm
they're,
surprised how much is transitioning.
Yeah,
It is,
and that's
but-
just as of right now.
Right.
yeah.
It may change.
But it's also costly, and so I think that we have to balance, like, I think it makes sense to create the roadmap, but like provide options, right? And say it's like, yeah, I mean, town has a ton of pickup trucks, but they might not be able to afford to replace all of them
And
with
that's
like
another part of the roadmap. but the first
F-150 Lightnings and Rivians.
The first thing is to identify,
I just purchased 2 of them this year.
Right, but I don't know if they can replace all of those
Well, that's-
by
that's-
2030,
Well,
right?
that's, so that was what I was saying before is inventory,
Mhm.
identify solutions, cost them, and then determine. how to
exactly,
fund
and
it.
that's part of the
Right.
roadmap. As we go down, you'll see that.
Right,
So identify what their solutions are now. And also we need to identify additional infrastructure needs. I mean, it doesn't do any good to replace your fleet if you can't charge it.
Mhm.
So there might be some additional, when you replace gas heating systems with heat pump water heater or heat pump systems, sometimes you need to change your ducting because it's a lower temperature
Mhm.
heat and that kind of stuff. So we have to identify those. Then the next thing is to determine what the costs are for these solutions. And that would include, what can we get for what we already have? If we sell our existing fleet, what the costs are. The next thing would be to replace or look at grants, rebates, other incentives for doing these. And this is all for the purpose of determining a cost structure for all the replacements. Then, let's see, identify criteria for choosing the best replacement solutions, such as cost. Do we have anybody that can install this stuff? Or use it? You know, maybe it's more difficult to use some of this stuff.
Just pausing on that point for a quick moment. When we started looking at promoting the all electric for new construction 2 years ago, it was pushed back primarily because there was a lack of available contractors. Well, that's changed in 2 years. So now heat pumps are becoming the norm.
Right.
And there are contractors that are adopting the installation of it, where 2 years ago it was a
Exactly.
barrier. So
Yeah.
we also have to have, you know, there's the present view of things and there's the view 5 years out.
That's one of the reasons why we didn't do a heat pump when we built 2 years ago. I couldn't find anybody that would do it.
Who's naked?
Then the next thing is to choose replacements and create a replacement schedule. And then do the replacement. So that's sort of the basic roadmap.
So do you see this roadmap as a timeline, a Gantt chart, a flow chart, and both? I mean, there's a if then, you know, if not this, then this path, but also a timeline associated with
I
it.
hadn't gotten to that level of detail. I just kind of was thinking of the various steps you have to go through, and some of them, there's interdependencies with those steps. And one of the first examples of that is this determining offset sources. That's actually something we should do concurrently, because we might find out that there are some good offset sources that we can purchase or implement that are more cost effective than replacing some stuff. So
And by offset, do you mean like the
carbon offsets.
Yeah.
So
The rub I have with that, just this, my personal, is that we're still producing the greenhouse gases in Ridgway.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, regardless of how we
you know,
offset it, morally speaking.
I agree. I don't like it either, but it is a viable solution.
It's an interim step, I see it, without a lack of being, but ultimately you don't want a brown cloud hanging over Ridgway.
Right, and I make that point in this note at the bottom that from a cost standpoint, it may be preferable
To
to get up to the bottom.
I mean, I think if goal is to like either eliminate or replace everything
Right.
that they can,
Right.
but if there are certain things that just cannot be.
And it may
completely
be, as you
changed out.
say, it may be a timing thing. Right now, maybe there's not a good replacement for something. And so the interim solution would be to purchase an offset so that we reach our goal of net zero by whenever.
Right.
But that we keep monitoring that, and at some point, maybe it becomes cost effective to go ahead and do that replacement.
Well, and also the admission that a goal and actually reaching the goal are two different things. I mean, the Buffalo Bills had the goal of going to the Super Bowl. Came up with that. So, they're part of their goal, right?
Right.
So anyway, that's just my first.
Yeah.
stab
Right,
at it.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do a lot on this.
It's a good brain dump.
Mhm.
And I think we can now take this and start building a Gantt chart or flow chart or whatever.
The other
however we
day,
want
just,
to do it.
Dave just came in. I just let him in.
oh, okay.
You there, Dave?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Did you want to move to adjourn?
Hey, Dave, it's Deb.
Hi, Deb. Welcome
Hi.
back.
I'm just filling in.
Good.
Dave,
Good.
just for your information, we are on action item 3 of the work session. So we're discussing the work plan.
Okay, great.
We, depending on how much time we want to spend it, I think we kind of all decided we'd like to at least do a little bit of prioritization and timelining for the items in the work plan. And we sidetracked a little bit because one of the things that I was assigned to do, or that I took on, was to take a stab at a roadmap, and we just got for a net zero. And I just got sort of going through my first draft of that.
Excellent.
And then to keep bring you up to speed on item number 2, we reviewed the current draft of the resolution. And we have some assigned tasks to create further information with the idea that we'll meet again next month and take some of that information to further flesh out the specifics in that resolution. Primarily, one of the items is to contact the folks at Mountain Town 2030 who represent other communities that are and have gone through this process to see what sort of precedent information they have either on the function or the format of their own resolutions and also what specifics they've, put in place to achieve that. So we can do a little more data collection.
Perfect.
And then what do we nominate Dave to do? I forget.
Dave's nominated for a lot of things, Dave. We're letting you know.
To 10 Mountain Town.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joyce.
So another update on this Mountain Town 2030 is the town council approved a $3,000 contribution to Mountain Town 2030 to become a founding member, which gives us 3 passes to the next sustainability summit, which is in Breckenridge in October, as well as the appointment of a liaison from the town to sit on their advisory board. I volunteered for the latter, assuming
Good.
ratified or codified by the town council, which won't happen until after the April elections when they reassign liaisons and committee appointments.
Excellent.
The April, I think is it?
Are you, is
Council?
it your, are you up for
I'm
election?
not up
For
for,
reelection?
yeah. Although I did give serious consideration to resigning just because I'm so overwhelmed with work and fire department board and sustainability advisory board.
Oof.
And the notion that I was retired is just ridiculous. Anyway, so that kind of brings you up to speed. We've had some good conversations. We reviewed, are you seeing the screen share right now?
I am. Thank you.
So we went through that too, and we discussed how the roadmap is part and parcel to the first objective. And then down further, how the establishment of goals date for the all new construction projects to be all electric is kind of part and parcel to the task above it, which is the energy cohort. Do you attend those meetings or have you?
I have, yes, I didn't make the last one, but I should make the next one. I've met the others.
And one piece of information came up, you may already know, is that, that we think that the core of that effort includes the model all electric and EV ready, but they've apparently established, more than 100 possible amendments, which are stretch goals. And that there may already be a language in one of the amendments that targets that next bullet, which is, skipping right to the all electric for new construction. There may be already a written amendment that we could adopt at this part when we adopt the code to bolster the model electric, all electric ready, EV ready. So
Yeah, I actually requested that from Kim that, since, we like a roadmap ahead, we need to set a date, but it would be nice to have an amendment. If they could draft it for us, that'd be wonderful.
And apparently I haven't seen it, maybe David has said there might be as many as 161, did you say, amendments that have already been drafted?
It's 161 pages. I think,
Pages.
if I'm referring to the same thing here.
So hopefully we don't have to recreate the wheel. There's something we can draw from on that.
Agree.
And that brings us up to right now. I do have one item that's not on the agenda that I'd like to quickly just mention, and it could be something that this committee adopts to work on. There's a new grant, it's not new, it came out a couple of months ago, but the due date is February 27th to apply for a New Era, which is Energy in Rural America grant that could apply to the solar systems in the Green Street Park that aren't the ones that SMPA is working on, the other 5, raised structures. So it's less than a month away. That what would be due is a concept paper that then gets you invited to submit a full grant later. I don't know what the date is for the invitation to submit a full grant, but if there's any appetite, I'm gonna be looking at that grant for the the 200 kilowatt solar system at Green Street, as well as a number of other projects that are related to the microgrid projects that we already have grants for. But is there any appetite or interest amongst this committee to actually take on the chore of trying to develop a concept paper to look for funding for those other solar systems in the Green Street Park? Or for that matter,
Mike?
anything to do with the Green Street Park, could be some of the other construction costs.
Might that lessen your chance of getting your grant if we also applied for other?
I don't think so. I think the two, in fact, it might complement it because there's impetus. The Green Street Park itself could be could be fodder for the grant. It includes renewable energy, microgrids, and infrastructure related around, sustainability measures. I can forward the FOA to this committee through Deborah, Preston, and keep the conversation going, but essentially, we would have to act on it prior to the next meeting, or no, just after the February version of this meeting, or
What's the due date on that one?
it's due by the 27th, has to be submitted, the concept paper has to be submitted. So I will forward that FOA information on, and that can be distributed.
Sure, yeah,
To
I
this
just
committee?
sent it to Preston.
Okay. And that's for the new grant. This is the same source of grant money that we were successful in getting 300,000 for Silverton and
I just wanna make sure.
San Juan County for the Team of Gold thing.
There it is. Okay.
Okay, great.
So maybe we return to this and see if we can kind of go through this real quick.
What do you want me to do?
You're on the right page.
Okay,
I think we were talking, it's our third action item for today's meeting is to figure out,
prioritize.
go through this and,
Yeah.
and we had talked about maybe some prioritization and some, putting a schedule to some of it. So, I don't know how I want to go about doing that, but I don't know how I think to me, I guess I don't feel like there's a need to prioritize it. I think we work on all items because we've got leads on
Yeah.
all. So I'm not sure that we need to prioritize it other than that indicates to us what we think is most important, but I think we can work on all.
The only
Yeah.
thing is, each meeting will have an agenda, so maybe we would have things we could talk about at each meeting.
I was thinking about two, so I was thinking at the next item, one, Dave, we should tell you what you're been voluntold to do.
Voluntold, I like that word.
All right, Joyce.
Dave,
Not beating around the bush.
Dave and David are working together to create the net zero GHG roadmap. And it seems I have both of you guys down for that.
I mean, I'm fine because Dave has other things.
Yeah.
I'm fine with, taking that on
Okay,
and being the lead on that.
okay.
And David, if you want to bounce it off of me, we can just bounce it back and forth.
Yeah, I think what I'd probably like to do is, we've gone through the first pass of this. Real quickly, just to kind of get out there. I think what I'd like to do is, as I have updates to it, or if I refine it, or I get comments from people, then we go ahead and do it within these meetings. That way everybody can, I mean, if I have specific questions for any of you, I could send it, but otherwise I think we just update it or work on it.
Yeah, as long as there's
Yeah.
not more than two of us on any communication.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dave, one of our goals was to organize and hold 2 educational outreach meetings, public engagement events in 2025. And that would be to promote like SAB education, the EV events and all of that stuff. And since you already kind of lead the EV ride and drive, we have you down for the lead on that. Is that okay for you?
Sure. Sure. I mean, the first one we have already, with the you know, we'll have the ride and drive event. We have that scheduled. And I think in coordination, in conjunction with that, we've talked about doing an educational
Yep.
meeting and trying to make that, you know, kind of a all electric as opposed just to EV based. The second one, I think we can brainstorm and come up with possibilities. I mean, I can talk to the, you know, the local, some of the local group, if they would like to be
Yeah,
involved.
and Dave, it doesn't have to, like, we have all of 2025 to figure out what our goal is too, but if it ends up being like, hey, it makes sense to just put our efforts into like one large kind of EV event with educational opportunities and stuff like that,
Something that comes to mind for the second one.
Yeah.
We had talked before you came on about having the town adopt this resolution before the Mountain 2030 Summit, because we want to be able to hail that at that summit, which is in October. So if we were to, you know, get our work done on this resolution and have it adopted, that might be an interesting fodder for another public engagement meeting, maybe at the Decker Room, is to have
Yeah.
a public
Well-
meeting to discuss what this resolution's about and to introduce a roadmap and a few other
I
things.
think when, in last meeting, somebody mentioned, maybe Preston mentioned that there's going to be a dedication of the space to create.
Oh, space to create, yeah, at some
And
point.
we were talking about that being the other.
That'd be a
one
good target for it.
And,
Yeah.
but I don't think that was,
Well, it hasn't had this
But when it
not
was
installed yet,
scheduled.
so.
it hasn't been scheduled yet.
No, that meeting, well, the dedication hasn't been scheduled because the system isn't installed yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm writing that into a quarterly report tonight. when I get-
great. Well, it sounds like there's definitely opportunities to be able to fit two of those in.
Mhm. Sounds good.
Yeah. So, and again, like, if it's too much, you can always, there are people.
I just said that would be a well-attended event, the
Yeah,
dedication.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah, I don't think I'm leading anything, so I can help Dave. I can take.
You're gonna be taking on a lot of stuff that I'm taking on, so I
That's
don't
true.
want you
That's
to
great.
commit too much yet.
Okay, you're like, no, don't take his.
I was like, and then we wanted someone to participate on the Sneffels Energy Board, Energy Code cohort by working with Eco Action, Lotus Engineering and Sustainability, and Noresco to align our region on an approach and code package for the 2024 IECC adoption, model electric, solar ready code. I think you're already participating in a lot of these boards, so we have you as kind of, if there's gonna be a representative,
That's fine.
it makes sense to have you.
An SAB representative.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
we're having an FAB representative.
Okay.
And those are your big ones. There is a goal to establish a goal date for all new construction projects to be all electric. But I think that might be tied into roadmap and resolution, but I
Well,
have,
actually, or an amendment to the code.
or amendment to the code, but I have Terry, you and Dave,
To Sneffels Energy Board and all that.
yeah, as the
Mhm.
champions for that one. And that's what you're championing. And then, yeah, we have a bunch of other ones, but
Yeah, the remaining.
Other
ones on that
people-
list, I don't think we really ever discussed.
yeah. Yeah, but those are the ones that you get to be the main lead for. Well, obviously, you'll be helping on other things, but that's your list.
Okay, sounds good. You cut out a little bit on that, but I think I've got it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I have this in a spreadsheet, and so I'll share the link with Deb, and she can send it to everyone.
Can you share it with Preston?
I can share it with Preston, and Preston can share it with everyone. Cause we just checked that the link worked, so, cool. Okay, well, so some of the other ones that we haven't talked about, I think the newer ones was transitioning into some of the waste and material use ones. So I think those were like decreasing festival and event waste. And then incentives for rebates for residential, commercial participation in local composting programs. And then increasing local organic food production consumption by like CSA availabilities and things like that. So those are the three things that I am leading. I'm gonna be working with Sheridan on that just because.
On which
uh,
ones? Sorry.
I'm sorry, can you
Oh.
just,
Well,
I'm trying to put down which ones you're,
oh.
so
Just
that was the
like that.
work and decrease.
The festival and event waste one, that's
Okay.
me.
Okay,
Evaluate, recommend options for instituting incentives, rebates for residential and commercial participation in local com. And then the bullet after that, increase local organic natural fruit production and consumption.
Just-
Those three.
Just to note to everybody, when you receive the spreadsheet that Joyce put together, it's color coded. And everything in yellow on that spreadsheet matches. So these are the ones that were adopted by the town and the strategic plan. We have additional ones that we are gonna do ourselves that don't require town input or resources. And those are a different color in this spreadsheet that Joyce is sending to all of us.
Yeah, yeah. And I just highlighted mine in.
so the
blue.
yellow ones are adopted,
Yellows are adopted, green are things that we can work on internally.
SAB only.
Yeah, it doesn't need,
For example, the green, I think, is all website related stuff,
yeah.
and we're doing that. with them.
And because I made this spreadsheet for myself, my items are highlighted in blue.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
that was mostly for me.
So just, I'm just wondering, would you guys mind telling me, because I haven't been involved in this, but the second, which is provide quarterly progress updates, is that somebody has been assigned to that? The
That
top of
was
the
Terry.
list, or is that Terry?
No, Terry's on town council, so
Right.
I don't remember. Are you providing updates?
Well,
On that?
every town
Yes,
council
every
meeting, I'm
town.
supposed to give a report.
Okay.
SAB committee report, and it's
Yeah.
usually just a verbal report. I think what this was referring to was for one of us to have a formal presence during the public
Yeah.
comment section.
Right,
Or
Terry isn't
actually
necessarily,
policy matters section.
Terry isn't necessarily delivering it, but he is the point person on this to either find somebody who's gonna deliver it.
Okay.
And that was specifically to talk about our progress on these 12
Right.
items.
Oh, okay.
So I think what we should do is establish the timeline, which meetings do we want to have a presence in? So, there's 4 quarters, so it could be, March, June, or end of June, end of September, end of the year, the end of the 4 quarters.
That's a good idea.
So we could establish those as our targets.
Mhm.
I don't think we need to flesh it out right now as to what's
Yeah,
gonna happen in the
okay.
first one, but
Mhm.
I think this is a chance for us to get up and have a presence in front of the town council saying, committee in the last 3 months has worked on these things, and here's the progress.
This is progress.
Mhm.
And some of them might say, we haven't done anything on this yet, but we're planning to do this in,
And I would suggest that it be we could either rotate or it'd be the board chairman, or is that you? Yeah.
Dave's chair, I'm co-chair currently.
I think it'd be good to rotate.
We just
rotate, yeah,
different
faces out, and kind of people.
Yeah, and also it can depend on what the updates are, because you might not need to update them on like every single item. It might just be like, this quarter, we really focused on the roadmap and the resolution, and this is like what we're hoping to do, and we're hoping to achieve it by this, and then present by, the Mountain Town meeting.
Good.
And so if, it might make sense for either you or Dave or David to present that, because you will be kind of the main leads on that item.
And before I forget, we got 3 free passes to Mountain Top 20. I'm gonna take one of them as probably the advisory board guy. John might want to take another. These are just the 3, we can have more people, but I think somebody else on the SAB ought to plan to attend that and use one of the free passes. So give some thought,
Yeah,
you guys.
well, I
to
thought
October.
Dave
I think
was
we have
one
to
of
do
them.
something to do it.
Yeah,
That's what
I
Well-
think Dave, yeah.
Will they
Dave-
have camping there?
It's gonna be in Breckenridge in October.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You could camp in Breckenridge in October.
Yeah, well, it just seemed like might be able to send more people if that's an option, but.
True. There's also a hostel in Breckenridge.
Cute.
Now, this year, the town paid our accommodation costs and our travel costs. And actually the registration costs, but we'll have 3 registrations. That's not to say we're limited to sending 3, that's just 3 free passes.
Yeah.
essentially.
I think I think we find out if town is gonna pay for accommodations for all,
We'll have to get specific. We SAB proposed this number of people that want to attend, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Last year it came together pretty quick.
And on the draft and recommended adoption of idle free, is that still, Dana still? spearheading
Dana's
that? Okay.
the lead.
She'd make that number 1, we'd have to do it tomorrow.
So,
She would send you 27.
evaluate, establish goals, that's goal date for all new construction projects to be all, that's all part of the other one,
Of
correct?
the cohort,
Yeah,
so that's kind of bundled in that.
that's kind of bundled,
And
okay.
it'll likely be an amendment that they've already drafted, but we're just gonna.
Yeah.
And then, festivals, that's Joyce, work to, let's see, evaluate, recommend options for instituting incentives, rebates for residents.
So those
That's
3
all
are mine,
ones.
yeah.
Okay,
The turf replacement program, that's second to last one. Terry is lead, but I am supporting. Yeah,
Okay,
because you're the one that asked about it.
yeah. What was I thinking?
I don't know.
It was just an
Joyce,
idea.
I wish those were numbered.
And the very last one, the wildlife corridor.
Actually,
Okay.
it's gonna do.
Yeah, Angela was the one that wanted that to be one of our goals. And said that she was still gonna be the one to be its lead liaison, even though she resigned, but she was still hoping to. Kind of lead that and
So we'll let that.
come up with
See
something.
if she
Yeah.
chimes in to participate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I agree with kind of Sheridan and Dave that it would be nice at our next meeting. If we could kind of talk about. Have kind of each person go through their primary tasks and talk about like, hey. This is what I'm planning for this, here's my hopes and goals for timeline or path forward.
That's great,
Yeah.
let's do that.
So.
Cause I think it gives, yeah, and it makes you accountable for your actual tasks.
Okay, so, at the next meeting, you want to have, everyone who's been assigned to, one of these, goals to go over what their plans are.
Yeah,
And timeline.
So we'll
Yeah.
do a progress report in the next meeting for
Mhm.
all these assignments.
yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
timelines, okay.
And I think if we have time, we should include anything that's on here that is not on your, I guess it's basically just website stuff
mhm.
and
And updates on that.
Angela's thing. So
Mhm.
I'll give an update on website
Okay,
stuff by next meeting.
I would assume that Preston would probably recommend that, on the last item where Angela absolutely can be a part of that, but I think still we'll want to have some member of the board.
Be
As a
her
representative
liaison.
on the,
Yeah.
But I'm just guessing who would be. would do that.
I guess as Dana would want to be involved with that too. She's buying that conservation easement.
Yeah, so Dana and Angela, yeah,
Put Dana's name next to that.
okay,
She can be Dana or
Angela
Angela's,
Dana.
yeah.
Mhm.
Angela's liaison.
Going back to the other Dana one, the draft, the idle free thing, was there actually a resolution already drafted?
No.
Yes.
So that's the real takedown.
Well, she may have
No, there
drafted
was a
something,
resolution drafted.
Was there one like this?
not in this,
This kind of a correctional town resolution?
Oh, yeah, no, there was the draft one that we had, that was, oh, maybe that was another.
I think that was another one.
yeah, I don't
Okay,
think they.
yeah, she had just written up something
Yeah.
in this one, there was not a draft
You guys-
resolution.
She has.
Sent a bunch of
Yeah,
links
right.
and other things, but hadn't compiled anything formally. And so I think when we were talking about these, we were saying that whoever's actually taking charge, like
Should
it's.
prepare a
it's-
draft resolution.
Yeah, they're also responsible for creating a draft and something that can be modified, presented, edited, not just like
So she would need to
References.
contact Preston to get this template.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, they're all pretty similar as far as the
Mhm.
whereas and.
Yeah.
as-
Yeah.
I told her
Actually-
it's just putting in the language.
yeah, and she could
And then
pull
tweaking it.
another town's, or I think town has something that promotes
Well,
idle,
Yeah, we have this sort
but
of,
it's not an ordinance.
it's not an ordinance,
Or a-
it's just, it's more of like a recommendation,
Yeah,
of not idling.
It's a guilt trip. It's a guilt trip poster.
It's
Right.
a poster
right,
Does,
that asks people to not run their
Yeah.
cars for more than.
3 minutes.
right, yeah.
does the town have an ordinance template that she can work from, so she has? a
Absolutely.
template?
There's an ordinance to, this would be a resolution.
An ordinance requires enforcement.
Oh, okay,
We-
it's the resolution. Okay.
And I think the whole thing about that is it's, the enforcement would be insanely difficult.
Yeah.
But a resolution would make everyone aware that this is, yeah.
Fine, my
Now,
question,
and now therefore, the resolution.
my question relates to, so that she
Yes,
has everything in the same format with the same
Yes,
font. same-
absolutely. She
Okay.
can get it's a template.
And Preston.
And
can
you
do that.
just, and you just fill in
She
what
fills
it
in
is
the
you're
whereases,
wanting.
but now therefore.
Yeah, and then you tweak it to make it the final.
And then we edit it, take out all the F bombs.
She will not put that file in there.
Well, she might.
She might.
She would if she could.
But yeah, there's templates for everything.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So she can get that.
Yeah, she would, for sure. Is there
Okay.
anything else you guys would like to go over?
No, I think those are,
The minutes or something.
oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, minutes. From the,
I move that we approve the minutes.
okay, Terry, Dave, okay,
Favor, aye.
I,
I,
Dave, thank you.
Aye.
I
Okay,
was supposed to say that. The all in favor part.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Dave was supposed to, I think, so that brings up another structural issue. Deb and Preston have been doing a great job of putting together these agendas. And to some extent, there's been the impression that you guys are running the meetings, but I think the actual chairman is supposed to run the
Yes.
meeting,
Mhm.
right? So we need to
The,
get on that more formally, I think.
and I'm just gonna say that the role of running that meeting is just to keep things moving and try to get through the agenda as much as possible.
And to ask for motions.
Right, right.
It's all the-
Some things will, motion is appropriate, some things you just agree upon is fine. Obviously minutes and things like that, you want to make sure to get approved, but, yeah.
I mean, Dave and I were running a handful of them, but
Yeah.
I think when Preston came through, he had some specifics he wanted to go over, and so it made sense for him to kind of lead those meetings. Cause, I think there were a lot of points he wanted to,
Well, and
Yeah.
he wanted to force us into creating this work plan so they can incorporate in the strategic.
he was
plan.
herding cats.
Yeah, yes, and I think, yeah, so again, I'm really here just to take minutes,
Mhm.
not to tell
Yeah.
everyone.
And I think from our next
Whatever
meeting,
whatever
Yeah.
he and you guys decide is the appropriate way you want to run the meetings, and that's how you do it.
the next
as-
meeting, either Dave or I will run it.
Okay,
depending on
but as it
who's
relates to forming the agenda, I think Preston formed the agenda,
Absolutely.
but we just discussed the idea that one of the agenda items should be a.
So I
Right.
got that in
Right.
notes, and I will go over that with them.
seems to be
So let him
the
know.
only, ongoing agenda item is to the progress report on the
Yeah.
work items.
Yeah,
Any of us that have something else that we would like to discuss outside of that should propose I guess, to.
Whoever's at the meeting at the time, or if it's not at a meeting and you want to propose something, send it directly to
Well,
Preston.
between meetings, so.
Yeah, that would be Preston. Yeah.
So in a typical town council meeting and a typical board meeting, there's an established agenda, and usually the first thing that happens in the running.
there
meeting
anything
is there
additional
to the
any
agenda?
additions to the agenda?
That'd be fine too. So we really have.
It depends on the
basically
meat of the
approved
agenda.
minutes and
Agenda item.
there's roll call, work item progress and approved minutes.
Mhm.
That's.
Those are the three basics.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are the big ones because what that helps establish is making sure that all of our goals keep moving forward, but also it presents the opportunity where if you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've kind of started this roadmap, but now I'm kind of stuck because I need to create this inventory, then it's good to have either Deb or Preston, because then you can ask, how do I get the town's inventory? Who do I contact?
Right, but I don't think I need to do that in a meeting context. I think I just contact Preston.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I think if you're
If I-
feeling overwhelmed and you can't
Right.
do it all yourself, that's like the time where you present like,
Can
I
get somebody?
need a hand. Can I, yeah.
Okay, well, it is 5 minutes, so I'm doing it again, sorry.
5 till 6. Do we want to adjourn this meeting? Yeah,
7.
5 till 7, yeah. I think we're good. What do we need to do to formally wrap
I
this?
move that we adjourn.
Second.
Great. Meeting adjourned at 6:56 PM.
Thank y'all.
Bye, Dave. Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Nice to
Bye-bye.
not see you again.
All right, bye-bye.
Well,
Where are you? Where are you in the world right now? Where are you now?
We are in Crested Butte.
Oh, well, okay, you're not in some other country doing something really majorly cool, but
No,
you're
we
not
just-
doing something majorly cool, I'm sure.
We came back from Mexico on Monday,
Oh,
last
okay,
Monday, and now we're in Crested Butte. But we will be home on Wednesday, so.
okay, all right.
Dave, I
Well,
was
look
thinking
forward to
about-
seeing you around.
I was thinking about you. I'm about to place a deposit on a bicycle tour through southern Portugal in October, the week after this.
You're not gonna do our Iron Horse this year?
No, I've done that 3 times. I'm done with that.
what's Iron Horse?
Iron Horse,
Right from Durango to Silver.
Reviewed everything.
I've done it many,
On a road bike?
many times.
I've done
I've
it
done
3
it.
times. That's enough. Last time was miserable.
How many
You've done it
miles?
3
is this?
times? Okay.
And I think maybe it would be good.
It's 60 miles, but it climbs 7,000 vertical feet, goes over to 11,000.
All right, well, Dave, it was good to hear from you, and we'll see you soon.
When I turn 65, so.
Wow.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
But it was miserable.
And I'm-
Snowed, I had an inch of snow on my back coming.
I think I've had 4 of my rides that were snow,
Snow.
frozen.
You've done it more than 4 times?
Completely frozen.